In 1983, 15-year-old Emanuela Orlandi disappeared from the streets of central Rome to attend a music lesson. Orlandi grew up in Vatican City, and this connection to the Catholic Church altered the perception of her disappearance from a standard missing persons case to something more sinister. Over the course of 3 decades, multiple people have come forward to either offer theories, cast blame, or take credit for her kidnapping, although no one has ever been arrested for her abduction. In the years since Orlandi went missing, she's been spotted supposedly alive and well in countries as far-flung as Turkey, yet workers for the Vatican believe she suffered a horrible fate. Orlandi's family is still holding out hope that she's alive, although they're realistic about the possibility that she's long since passed. It's a sad, strange story that becomes more twisted and confusing as the years go by. Emanuela Orlandi grew up in Vatican City, home of the Pope and a popular tourist destination. On June 22, 1983, she was on her way home from a flute lesson when she disappeared. At some point in the evening, she called home and spoke to one of her sisters, but after that, her family never heard from her again. Last seen at a bus stop in Rome's city center, Orlandi subsequently vanished. Her family has received varying reports and clues as to what happened to her. While her brother continues searching for her, he's haunted by their last conversation and argument over whether or not he would take her to the flute lesson. He told The Guardian, "It's a very painful memory. She insisted I take her, and we rode over it. Then she left, slamming the door. I never thought it would be the last time I saw her. I've gone over it so many times, telling myself if only I had accompanied her, maybe it wouldn't have happened." The Orlandi family has been chasing leads regarding Emanuela's disappearance since 1983, which has led them down some strange roads. In 2019, they petitioned the Vatican to allow them access to the tomb of Princess Sophie of Hohenlohe, who died in 1836. A source pointed them toward the tomb in an anonymous letter, and with Vatican-appointed forensic scientists, they opened 2 burial places where Orlandi's remains were supposedly buried. When the scientists opened the tomb, there was no trace of Orlandi nor traces of anyone else. Supposedly, no one had been inside the tomb since 1836, but it was clear something strange had happened. A Vatican spokesperson released a statement saying the space was completely empty. The statement continued, "There were no human remains nor funerary urns. We expected everything today, but not to find 2 empty tombs. We want to know why we were sent there and why there was nothing." After decades of going back and forth with the Vatican over his lost sister, Pietro Orlandi said he was touched when the Vatican agreed to look for her in one of its tombs. He believes the Church was somehow complicit in her disappearance, and its olive branch in 2019 showed Orlandi that there was an admission that there is a possibility of internal responsibility. However, with more missing bodies on its hands, it became clear there was a bigger problem in the Vatican than just one missing person. There are now multiple families who don't know where their loved ones are. Orlandi told the New York Times, "Now, even the heirs don't know where they've gone. I think this is a problem for the Vatican that will have to be justified." The Orlandi family has had to deal with some incredibly strange tips and rumors about where Emanuela's body could be. The information ranges from hearsay to cryptic ramblings that open the search up to more questions than anything else. Pietro Orlandi has fielded all kinds of information about his sister, and he tends to follow up on whatever leads he's given, no matter how strange they sound. In 2017, Orlandi received information from multiple people claiming his sister was buried where an angel was pointing in the cemetery. As odd as that sounds, he believes it meant her remains are in the Teutonic Cemetery, a site adjacent to St. Peter's Basilica that contains a statue of an angel pointing. If there's a theory about Emanuela Orlandi's disappearance, her family has heard it. Many of the tips they receive are from people who believe they saw her in a crowd, but often the information sounds more like plots to a movie than realistic possibilities. Still, as outlandish as some of these clues may be, the family looks into them anyway on the off chance they lead to some insight into Orlandi's disappearance. In 2008, Sabrina Minardi, a woman who dated mobster Enrico De Pietris, claimed that American Archbishop Paul Marcinkus, former president of the Vatican Bank, had Orlandi kidnapped, although it's not clear why he supposedly wanted her off the streets. Marcinkus passed away in 2006, and although he was attached to an Italian banking scandal in the 80s, there were never claims of kidnapping or child endangerment. The Vatican responded to Minardi's claims, simply saying they were from a source whose value is highly dubious. After 3 decades of looking for Emanuela, the Orlandi family still hopes to find her alive, no matter how unlikely it seems. Some who claim to have seen Orlandi genuinely think they've bumped into her on the street, with reports coming from as far as Turkey and England. Other tipsters, however, seem more concerned with personal gain. Roberta Hidalgo, an author who wrote a book about the missing girl, believes Orlandi is still living somewhere in Rome and that she's just been hiding since the early 80s. After the family searched a tomb for Orlandi's remains in 2012, Hidalgo said, "The reopening of the tomb is to throw people off track." Hidalgo didn't specify what Orlandi gains from staying hidden. In 2005, an anonymous phone call was placed to a television program about Orlandi's disappearance, directing the family to the tomb of a local mobster. The caller said, "To find the solution to the case, go and see who's buried in the crypt of the Basilica of San Apollinare," meaning the tomb of former mobster Enrico De Pietris, who lost his life in a gun battle in 1990. The same caller claimed Orlandi was taken off the street at the behest of Cardinal Ugo Poletti, who was the Vicar General of Rome at the time. However, the tipster didn't provide any further insights on Poletti's involvement or offer any evidence to bolster the claim. Forensic experts searched the tomb and didn't just find the remains of De Pietris, they also found several other bones. At the time, the police said they would test the remains to see if any of them belonged to Orlandi, but no results have been shared. One of the most harrowing claims about Orlandi's disappearance came shortly after she vanished. In 1981, there was an assassination attempt against Pope John Paul II. He was shot and wounded by Mehmet Ali Agca, a gunman who belonged to a group calling itself the Turkish Anti-Christian Liberation Front, or the Grey Wolves. Ali Agca gave myriad reasons for his attack on the Pope, but his motive has never been fully clear. In 1983, the Grey Wolves announced they were behind the disappearance of Orlandi and that the Pope should pray for both the girl and Ali Agca. The group went on to insist that if Ali Agca wasn't released from prison, Orlandi would be killed. No one is certain whether the Grey Wolves ever had Orlandi in their custody, but the Pope did pray for her and Ali Agca on August 29, 1983. He prayed for the innocent and the defenseless, saying, "I feel very close to the parents of these young students, sharing their unspeakable anxiety, and I pray that the Lord will touch the hearts of those who say they are holding these innocent and defenseless beings. As always, I pray also for the person of my would-be assassin." Mehmet Ali Agca, the would-be assassin who attempted to take out Pope John Paul II, said a lot of outlandish things following his incarceration. His claims not only shine a strange light on the attempt, but also on the Orlandi case as well. In 1985, Agca told police that the abduction was ordered by a group related to the Masons calling themselves Propaganda 2. Furthermore, he said Propaganda 2 knew Ali Agca was Christ and that the group was going to place him in the Vatican. Ali Agca changed his story multiple times while awaiting his trial, but he eventually admitted he was just trying to make himself seem less credible by throwing around wild stories. His ever-changing story makes him one of many non-credible sources connected to Orlandi's mysterious disappearance. Despite all the clues that have been tossed out to the press since the early 80s, no one has ever been arrested for Orlandi's disappearance. Multiple Italian mobsters have had their names lobbed around in the press by anonymous sources, but none were ever officially linked to Orlandi. The outlandish claims of Mehmet Ali Agca played a major part in sabotaging further information in the case. In addition to the Grey Wolves and a nebulous Masonic organization, Bulgarian agents and the KGB have also been fingered for the crime. One suspect, Roberto Calvi, was found hanged to death in London shortly before Orlandi went missing. It seems everyone has an opinion about Emanuela Orlandi's disappearance, including key members of the Vatican. Father Gabriele Amorth, the Vatican's chief exorcist, believes Orlandi was kidnapped in order to be shuttled around sex parties and used as a slave. The claim is controversial, and Amorth doesn't have anything to back up the claim, but he's steadfast about his belief. On top of his belief about the motives for Orlandi's presumptive kidnapping, Amorth is certain someone from within the Vatican helped abduct her and that she's now passed away. He told the La Stampa newspaper, "This was a crime with a sexual motive." Parties were organized, with a Vatican gendarme acting as the recruiter of the girls. The network involved diplomatic personnel from a foreign embassy to the Holy See. I believe Emanuela ended up a victim of this circle. Decades after Emanuela Orlandi vanished, her family has come to the conclusion that there's more than one person behind the disappearance. They haven't said whether or not they believe a government or religious agency is behind her passing, but her brother, Pietro Orlandi, considers it inexplicable that no one has come forward with real evidence. While speaking with the New York Times in 2012, he said many people know what happened to his sister, but his family remains in the dark. 7 years after that interview, he remained steadfast in his claim that more people were involved with the mysterious case than many want to admit. Pietro told The Guardian, "I am incapable of accepting injustices, but especially when it involves my sister, knowing that over all these years there are people who know what happened. For me, the right to the truth and the right to justice are sacred rights that nobody can ever take away."